So, you've heard me say before that, our industry is really misunderstood. And a lot of it can even be our fault. It can be our approach. But I want to talk mostly about opportunity tonight. And, if you can get people in to see the business the way that you see the business, they're going to stay around a lot longer. And so there are some things that I'm going to take you through tonight so that hopefully when we're sharing the vision with people and even for ourselves, I think sometimes we need to remind ourselves of what we have so that, we do the extra to make sure that we have things going on. And sometimes it's so easy, because this is not a business that you can kind of really feel, see, and touch. We can feel, see, and touch the products, but we can't really feel, see, and touch the business. It's not like the transactional thing of when you buy something, you sell something, you make something. It's not quite that clear. And so hopefully I can share a little bit bigger picture with you so that you can share this with others, because this is something that I think sometimes gets lost. And maybe sometimes we think it's a little bit harder, but there's just, again, a few things that we need to remember as we go through this. So one of the things that we need to ask ourselves, or in particular the people that we're talking to, is the question of looking into the future. Everybody has their head in the sand lately. They are not even looking for tomorrow. So, it's like they forget about how bad yesterday was. They don't even want to think about what's going on tomorrow. But we need to get them to look at the next 5 years. And for most of us, God willing, we'll still be around, we'll still be working. But the key is, do you want that to be the start of everything? Every day, the start, every month, you're going to work. And so keep in mind, as people get older and people get sicker, they get tired. It's harder to work those hours and stuff. And so sometimes when we talk to a young person, we need to remind them, at 25, yeah, you can outwork probably any financial situation you get into. You can work 12, 18 hours a day. But do you want to do that at 55, 65, 75? I can tell you, I talk to a lot of people in that range that are still working 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. They're working a lot of time and they don't like it. They don't feel good, but they have to. And so we want to really avoid that. We don't want to be in that situation. And so we need to remind people that if they don't do something today, something fairly easy, then what does tomorrow look like? And again, sometimes when we're talking to people, we have to put those things out there. And, this is if their goal is money, but it could be a legacy to the next generation. You got to kind of figure out what people are wanting. But, money is a big motivator. And I'm going to get into more why that's going to go on. But that's why leverage or repeat. I like repeat income. When I'm talking to new people, I use the term repeat. I don't use leveraged income, but I know in our company, we've been using that word a lot, because I think people don't really know what leveraged income is. It sounds cool, but I'd rather have somebody understand what I'm talking about. So, eventually we'll all reach a point where we want our money and our efforts working harder than we do. And that's what this industry gives, unlike any other industry out there. Even if you're an actor and actress, you don't have the repeat income you used to have. If you're in insurance, you're in real estate, none of that has the repeat income it had even just a few decades ago. So when I look at different businesses out there, we are one of the last ones where we actually have this repeat income, unlike anything else out there. Now, you may have seen this slide, and I thought this was interesting. This is the slide that Brandon and Tyler have used the last few times they did a business overview. And I'm going to just, use that managing consultant one. And I'm actually going to tie this in a little bit later. And then I'm going to ask Bobby to tell a little bit story as we move forward. But managing consultant one is a business that's doing $10,000 a month. That's what that business is doing. It is earning $1,400 a month. Okay. So I don't know if you thought the 10,000 was big, the 1,400 is too little. But get this. So he was very generous. Brandon said 6% on a CD. If you had almost 300,000 in the bank, you would earn that 1,400. But think about it. Now we're going to talk about 5 years. That's what I've been talking about in 5 years. And that's where Bobby's story and really our story started. The gentleman that originally got us in the businesses, he's like, give me 5 years. Okay. So if I took that almost 300,000 and I took it, for 5 years, that's 60 months, I'd need almost to save an additional $5,000 a month. Think about that. You can do 10,000 in business based on other people's efforts. And we all know, say maybe I do 1,000 and I get 9 other people to do 1,000. Does that seem easier? Or earning enough on your own efforts, an additional $5,000 a month to be able to save almost 300,000. This is what people don't get. They don't see how powerful, and I get 1,400 may not be life-changing for a lot of people, but I do know in our group, there are people that earn, say, $3,000 a month, and it is very important to them. Maybe they didn't prepare properly as we go into the future. So little can be done to earn a lot, but sometimes we don't make that extra call. We don't make that extra follow-up. We don't do the struggle to share with the next person how important this business is, how big this business can be. And again, that's just one scenario because I felt like everybody could see a business where they're doing 10,000 a month. We've got a lot of them in our business. So here's an easy illustration I'll use a lot of times with people just to let them understand that, if they're going to earn $100 and they're doing it all by themselves, they're doing it all by themselves. And in most cases, there's no repeat income. And if you get sick, and we used to talk about this a lot more, we dealt a lot with doctors. And so, doctors make great money until they hurt their hand, or they can't quite work because maybe they've had a mini stroke or something's gone on, and there goes their whole income. And we know case after case where that happened. In fact, they would say the average doctor, by the time they were 57, they weren't even alive. So, I mean, you have to tie this in. What if it's a plumber? What if it's an electrician? What if it's a typist and she hurts her hand? There's all these cases where people can't work anymore and their lifestyle greatly changes if everything's on them. But what if they get, 10 people to do the 100, now they've got 1,000. It's not based on them. And if any one goes down, and that's the key thing that we need to share, if anyone goes down, they'd still have 900. Better than having none, and if you've got 100 people and it's 10,000, you've got a lot of people working for you. And that's ideally what this business is about. So when we look at this business, and, we used to say, I kind of forget this, Bobby, we used to say, you work it till it's like it's going to be around forever, but work it like it's also your last day. Like you got to make all you can make today. But if you knew that 1,400 or 10,000 or whatever it was guaranteed, what would you do to make that extra call? I play games with myself all the time with these calls. And, sometimes you get on a string where the calls are bad. The people are bad. They say dumb stuff. They're not even what you want. But you know what? You got to play a game where if you don't get the right call or the things aren't going right, you got to make one more. So make it so that you end on a good call. Play some kind of game with yourself that way. Like if I make, 3 calls today, I'm going to do this for myself or whatever. But we all have to play these kind of games with making ourselves, because it's not really about the doing. If you do it enough and you make enough calls, things have to happen. It's when we hedge our bet on 1 or 2 that we really have no guarantees that something will happen. So if you make enough calls, somebody will finally see what you're saying. But again, you may have to make several calls to that same person. So how many calls would you want to make if that income was guaranteed? Would you agree to make 2 calls a day? We can always go back to that to being a minimum, but we've got to make the calls, because the problem is when that number is that low, it's easy to say not today. Oh, I'm busy today, or I forget today. So it almost means that we need to be consistent. And you've heard this word before, very consistent in our business, not a block of time, not hours or anything, but it has to be consistent in when we're making these calls. So this is actually, I'm going to share this in the chat later when Bobby's talking. This is actually a reel that Dee shared with me that was super cool. And I actually remade it, but I didn't do it as good as the original girl did. But this is pretty cool when people start and we do the 1-to-1 on our hours base, when they see you're adding people, whether you do 5-5, 525, 125, or you do the 110, 100, then people say, oh, it's a pyramid. Okay, so we all know this, if you're one of these who work for, and this kind of gets everybody into this, it's the salary worker, it's the middle management, it's the team leader, it's the VP, it's the CEO. Doesn't that all look like a pyramid? It's a pyramid. Everything we do is a pyramid. It's no different. But get this. What if the person who started 15 years ago is making more than the person who started 4 years ago that's making more than the person started yesterday? Isn't that life? That CEO didn't start that position just yesterday, didn't graduate college and get to be CEO. He put his time in. The VP put his time in. Middle management put their time in. So why is our industry any different? And sometimes we need to do a real good job of reminding people that everything is a pyramid, and to really get them to think about it. So the way that this girl did the video was really good, and she did a great job on it. So I'll copy and share that afterwards while I'm doing this. But this is what we have to remember. We have our hands on something super special, something nobody else has. Yeah, it is product driven, but our business and how we build our business is really the biggest opportunity. But if you need a little bit more, we have the only product proven to extend life. We get off on the collagen tangent, which we've gotten great results with that. But then, we get off on gut health and we get off on the GLP-1. That's not our opportunity. And I feel sad for people that think that just building a weight loss company is their opportunity, because we've seen those come and go. It just happens. So, we want to build something long-term. I know the other thing I forgot to say about the numbers is, we talked about 6% on an average CD. If you think back to 2009 when we had the recession, the CDs hovered a little under 1%. So in order to get that $1,400 a month, we'd probably need 1.7 million in the bank that you'd have to save up with over 5 years. So just, we need to keep in mind that 6%, even by today's standards, is super generous. But there are times where CD rates have, which is interest rates, have been a little over 1%. But, wouldn't you do something today to get paid for the rest of your life? Even if it was only 1,400, could you see yourself working 5 years? When we first got involved, and the phone call that I kind of forced Bobby to get on after a long weekend of going back and forth, the gentleman said, will you give me 5 years? So we need to think about, will you give me 5 years? And I won't steal all his thunder with that, but wouldn't that be a huge opportunity to get that money? Even the 1,400, if you think about it, even if you were going to sell product, don't we on $4,000 worth of product get between 1,200 and 1,600 a month? That's repeat, as long as you keep up with those customers. If one falls off, you add another one. It's just playing around with some numbers. We need to be able to show people the numbers and just be a little bit more positive with it. So, we need to share, and this is what I do. And I think probably one of the things that I do better is I always share the market view. What is going on out there? Why is our opportunity exploding today? Why is it so important? Well, if you look around the country and you look around anywhere, we have an aging population. You can't get away from it. Most people are over 60 everywhere. Some are in better shape than others. We happen to be one of the wealthiest countries in the world, but we also are one of the sickest. I think we're like number 54 or something in the world the last time I looked. We are not even close to the top as far as health. We have all these great doctors and stuff, but we have some 80,000 more toxins that aren't allowed in other countries. These are the things that people need to understand. How big is this opportunity? Like, who am I going to talk to? Who do you know that is aging? Who do you know that needs money? Who do you know is sick? These are the things that we need to be able to share with them. And the kicker is we have a product for everyone who breathes. So when people wonder about selling a product, is there anybody they know that doesn't breathe? I mean, it's an opportunity for everyone. Everyone needs our opportunity. Everyone needs our product for sure. So we have our hands on something special, but we gotta remember all that. The other kind of benefits, sometimes you can talk to depending on who it is, multiple streams of income. The sad thing is sometimes people make great money. And I hear these horror stories over and over again. They get into their 50s and they're let go. Corporate America let them go. And now they're having trouble finding a job because they're too old. Too overqualified is the term that they use. But they're having trouble getting a job. We have a low startup compared to, and this is one of the other things that I always weave into my story is, Bobby had his traditional business. He had the picture frames. But oh my goodness, for him to start over and get back in business, there was going to be equipment, there was warehouse, there were supplies, there were employees, there was insurance. How much money do you need to start a business these days? Leverage or repeat income. Even if he put all that money into a business, there was no guarantee that there would be leveraged income. There would be no repeat income. We just don't know. What about flexible schedule and you can build it anywhere? Isn't that perfect? I mean, people want to be able to travel. They want to be able to go anywhere. We played pickleball last night. Literally in between games, I had somebody, I said, Sabrina, get over here, take my racket, you go. I went to the car, signed somebody up, came back and played the rest of the game. I mean, it can be that simple. We can build it anywhere. Personal growth. I'm a case in point. I wish sometimes we could morph back. Well, I don't really want to, but I almost wish you knew me, going to school and stuff. I mean, it was like, I'm lucky I had a boyfriend. I mean, I talked to nobody. It was really hard for you to get to know me. I was that introverted. I didn't want to talk to anyone. But the personal growth in this business has been huge. And what about aging and earning? That's going to look really different for a lot of people because maybe they don't feel good. Maybe they can't stand on their feet all day. Maybe they can't drive a car, spend the hours to do Uber, whatever's going on. And then tax benefits, great tax benefits with a business like this. You're crazy. Even if you love what you're doing in a typical job or whatever, if you don't have the tax benefits of a business like this. So this is what I really wanted you to see a little bit more. And I know I've showed you this before. So again, the 4,000 is you doing sales, customer sales. We earn 12 to 1,600. But then I wanted to make it one step more visual. So, if we take that 1,200 or I use 1,400 and we take the 2,000, which is earned on 5 people have all done 4,000. Those 400s are people who have done 4,000, have a business of doing 4,000. Do you know our business is literally flooded? And I could never name all the names, but I was sitting here and there's so many names that you all don't see that aren't even on this Zoom all the time. But they're all doing, 4,000, a little under, a little over, a lot over. There's tons and tons of people. And so, and you may be one of them right here on here, or a lot of people. And some of you've got businesses that are really starting to bust out. And I'm so excited about that. But I could put more than names here on these people that are doing 4,000. And when it gets that visual, and originally when I talked to Bobby this morning, I said, I want to use our organization, but then I didn't really want to call anybody out. He said, you got to be really careful with that. But it just blew up in my mind with how just these people doing 4,000, can build such a huge business. And then you look and you take it down a level. And, this is the example of having 280 people, 125,000 a year. But, most people don't make that kind of money. I think it was like, less than 15% of Americans. And these are the figures you kind of got to know. A lot of times when I talk to somebody, I'll ask what they'd like to earn. And every once in a while, they'll throw out, and more often than not, they'll throw out a ridiculous number. I want to earn $1 million a year. I said, okay. So you're earning at the rate of $1 million? No. Oh, 500,000, no. And usually it's all the way down to 40 or 50,000 a year. So you got to kind of bring them back to what they're doing. But if you can show them how to make 125,000, that is super exciting for them. So, most people will work decades to have this kind of income. But, we're able to show them how to do it pretty easy by talking to some people, but then more importantly, helping people in that personal growth. So hopefully at the end of this, you've wanted to make the extra calls and you'll keep that in mind, even on the tough days. And I tell you, every once in a while, I run downstairs and I tell Bobby something somebody really stupid said to me. So, it happens to all of us, but we have to readjust our brain. Make sure you call that person on the chicken list. The good thing about a chicken list is they're probably the person that could be most beneficial for your business, but they're probably the person that will, if they say no, will let you down super easy. You won't even know you've been let down. So definitely reach out to that. The cool thing I like about this industry is, and I do it a lot, is, you can continually follow up with the person you want and continue to drip on them, whether, it's somebody that you said no originally. Eventually you will get them. Follow up when you feel uncomfortable, when you feel awkward. Again, we think so much in our brain, they're not thinking about us. After the phone call is over, they're on to their next thing and they're thinking about what's going on with them. They are not thinking about you. We just major on us when really people are not spending that much time thinking about us. Meet one more person for coffee, go make one more appointment for lunch, get out among people, because wouldn't it be better in 5 years from now to say that I'm glad I made those extra calls, instead of being one of those people that has been around using product and say, I wish I would have started when I first looked or when I first joined. And so you can either fall in one of those two categories. And, Bobby and I really hope that it is the first category that you fall in. But Bobby, I'm going to stop the share and you can kind of talk about, when we got started, your first phone calls and different things that went on.
So I hope you took some screenshots and stuff on that. The thing that got my attention this morning, and I hadn't thought about it for a very, very long time until April brought it up. We were walking out of church, going back to the car, and she had brought it up. And she said, have you ever thought about how many people on our team that we have had the opportunity to work with and earn money with for decades? Decades. And I'll be the first to tell you, April and I, we aren't superstars. We're not Tyler. We're not Tara. We're not the Pose. Okay. We're just consistent in what we do. And we don't have any superstars on our team either. Okay. We're not, and we don't have. We just have a lot of great people that we love. Okay. And we started thinking about it. And there are people, some on the screen here now, that have been earning money with us, and we've had the opportunity to earn money off of what they do for decades. Liddy, Jaya, Joanne. I could go on and on and on. Okay. It's just, and it's funny. April said something before. She said, most of our team you'll never see or meet because they're doing their own thing. They're kind of retired from the business. They just get paid every month, and I'll give you an example. Our Belgium and Dutch team, they're kind of retired. We've known them for 30 years, and every once in a while they'll bring someone new along and we'll see if we can light a fire under their butt. But let me ask you a question. What can you do with somebody, okay, that can pay you or will pay you for decades? Decades. Okay, April was talking about 1400 and needing to have 300,000 in the bank, getting 6%. Do you know how much more you need to make to accumulate the 300,000 that you don't touch? And I always said this, you would have had to save a whole lot more than 1400 a month to get to 300,000. So
5,000.
if you saved that money, would you be happy with the 1400? Okay. And the answer is no to that. Yet we could build a business. And April mentioned 10,000 a lot of times. Keep in mind, she wasn't talking dollars. She's talking about an organization doing $10,000 worth of sales that would earn you $1,400. And you could do that with 5, 10, or 15 people. Isn't that a lot easier then accumulating 300,000. And then she brought up something else all during COVID. And after that, when the interest rates crashed, we were looking at a lot of CD stuff at 1, 2%. It wasn't six guaranteed. That wasn't the case. So what she wanted me to share with you is the gentleman that got us in the business 33 years ago. His name was Ralph. I was all in with my other business, even though it was going down. Okay. But I also had a hobby. Well, it wasn't bad. I played softball every day. I was in like 5 leagues besides my business. Okay. And I never forget this. He's talking to me on the phone and he realized, okay, this guy's got his own picture frame art and frame business, art galleries and stuff. And he likes to play ball and he's doing it every day. Something's got to give. Okay. He's going to have to find time somewhere. Okay. And he said, well, son, if you give me 5 years, I'll teach you how to do it. And we had just finished talking about earning $1 million a year. I was making 90,000 a year. Do you think I believed that 1 million was possible? If I believed it, I'd be doing it. Okay. So I didn't believe it. I just liked what I heard. And he said so matter of factly, and this is why you got to learn to say some of the things that April was talking to me. He said, well, son, if you give me 5 years, I'll teach you how to do it. And then he said this because he was suggesting it was time for me to retire from softball. Okay. And his timing was good because we had just won a Long Island championship. And I was playing with older guys that wanted to go into a higher age league. And they weren't doing it because I was younger than them. So they didn't want to leave me behind. So the timing on it was good, but he was trying to make me understand something had to give. And then he said this, and please hear me on this one. He said, if you give me 5 years, you can go back to playing as much softball as you want. He says, but I'm going to tell you a secret. You're not going to want to do it no more because you're going to have the option of doing anything you want anytime you want to do it. And you're going to find other things you'd rather be doing. So I'm just giving you a heads up. And do you know, and you guys know the sports fan I am, you know the baseball fan I am, all my boys played high school, college baseball, all of that. You know that. Do you know I never played again? When I walked away from the game 30 years ago, I never played again. I found other things to entertain myself, and he was spot on. So why do I say that? We need to look further down the road. Okay. And when we're talking to people, those are the kind of conversations you need to get into. But you use yourself as an example. You don't point fingers at them. Okay. You never point fingers at other people. You always use yourself or a third party example, okay, of it. You don't say, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. You're going to say, I woke up one day and realized that I'd been doing this for 20, 30 years. And if I didn't change something, I was going to be 80 years old and still having to do it. Okay. You use yourself or an example of a third party. Okay. And somewhere along the line, folks, we've forgotten to do that when we're talking to people about a business. Okay. And it was this morning after church when April mentioned, I said, wow, I'll never forget when Joanne and John answered an ad on the radio when they were living in Atlanta. And supposedly it was for John to do, but Joanne was the personality in it. And I'll never forget. And it's been decades that we've been earning money together and a lot. She has built very, very big organizations and made relationships with them. I'll never forget Jaya. Man, we flew out in a jet, a private jet, to do a meeting in Chicago. And Dr. Castori, she's not 7 feet tall. She's a little shorter than that. And she's in the back of the room. And we had just finished the presentation. And she says, and I'm just going to tell you this, okay? She was in her early 60s, okay? And she walked to the front of the room because I was speaking. And she says, you don't know me yet, but you will. And that's going on almost 30 years ago, 27, 28, 29 years ago. I can't even count the money that we've made together and the volume that was done. And Jay is under Joanne. Catalina is under Jaya. And there's hundreds of other people under them, that many of which you'll never even see. Okay. It doesn't take a lot, people, for a lot to happen. And we got to learn to talk a little bit further down the road to people and make them understand that extra thousand, two, three, four, 5,000 a month is equal to that half a million, million, or 2 million in the bank. Okay. And which is going to be the easier one to do? Which is going to be the easier one to do? See, this, when you have consumables like our products and you have people that stay on them, well, look, we all know everybody that uses Protandim, the yellow pill, yellow is in now, okay? The little yellow pill, that's a lifelong thing. When do you ever want to tell the oxidative stress and the inflammation to come bury you? See, it's something that you want to stay on for your life. Okay. And with an aging population, and we look global at this, there's no end to the customers and consultants that we could get in the business. But we have to adjust our conversation a little bit and get people looking a little further down the road. Okay. And it's easier now. You know why? Look at the screen. Look at the average age of all of us. See, 30 years ago, the average age on the screen was in the 30s. That is not the average age on the screen here, which means what? The money is more important to be repeat residual money now because of the age we are than, say, the age my kids are now, where they just feel like they're Superman. You know how it is when you're in your 30s, you're Superman. Nothing can get you. You can just do whatever you want, you know? And but we're not Superman or Superwoman anymore, okay? So we got to get into those conversations and let people know that this exists, that it's real. And you can introduce them to lots and lots of other people who have done it, and all they got to do is follow the blueprint. Just follow what's already been done. Does that make sense to you? Does that make sense to you? You know, I'm telling you, we have our hands on the greatest opportunity today in the world. And here's what I think. I was a little caught off guard when they asked us to go out to Utah on short notice. I'm like, and I'll just tell you, April said the same thing. I don't feel like it. Like, I don't want to. You know, I'm on the East Coast. It's a long freaking trip. I just don't feel like it. And something tells me that and I've spent a lot of time talking to Brandon lately. He's been a really, really good guy because we don't have a presidential in the upline. We don't have what do you call it? An FAB member in the upline. So Brandon's been really great with keeping us informed with stuff. And we've gotten to know him over the 8 years. And he feels that run that people had back in '09, 10, 11, 12, 2000s, that 3 year run when it went from 10, 20 million a year to 150, 160 million in like 3 years. He feels we're on the verge of that again. Okay. And he's never said that before. Okay. And we have honest conversations. Like he's not blowing smoke up our butts. Okay. He respects the 33 years we're in the business. We respect that he's been able to maintain presidential for a dozen years now. It took him a few years to get there, and it's probably 12, 13 years that he's maintained it now. So don't you want to be a part? How many times have you and I said, we've all said it, boy, I wish I was there then, right? We've all said that, right? When they had that 3 year run going from 10 or 20 million to 180 million or whatever the number was, okay? The feeling is it's coming again. Do you want to miss it this time? Or if you were a part of it the first time, don't you want to be a part of it the second time? If you were fortunate enough to see it the first time. We had that happen to us in our other company, but our other company went out of business. Okay. But we had a run like that. Jaya saw it, Liddy saw it, Lynn and Noel, they saw it. Okay. So I want to be a part of the next big run with all of you. Okay, that's what April and I want to do. And we're excited about it. And I promise you, they can make me sign whatever they want when I get out to Utah. If they got something good to say, we're going to tell you. And that's all there is to it. So it's like, don't invite me if you want me to keep my mouth shut. Just leave me home. It's how it is. But does that make sense? Is everyone good with that? So next Sunday, anything that's important we'll get to you. Next Sunday, you have the night off, but better yet, use it to go talk to some people about your business or your products. Use the couple hours to do that. And we'll be gone Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, back Tuesday night. And if we feel we need to do a training on Wednesday or something, we'll get the word out to you. Good? Are we good? April, anything else?
Yeah, I put the link for that cute little video. If you have a problem with, again, I just love to share videos. So if someone has a problem with pyramids, just share that
Yeah,
and that'll
that's a
shut them
good one.
up. So, thank you, Dee.
Yeah, D, you find some good stuff there. So,
Yes.
anyway, have a great evening, everyone. Thanks so much for your time. God bless you. Bye bye.
Bye.
Thanks, Bob and April.
Bye, Freddie.
See you later. Have a good